to deliver and to describe the findings of fact, conclusions of law, and order regarding the public hearing that was held in relation to the proposed incineration of PCBs at the UND Energy Research Center. In view of the level of controversy and the significance of this issue, I felt that it would be appropriate for us to come directly to the community with the findings from the hearing. Mr. Gene Christensen isn't here today. He certainly was a very important part of the hearing itself, and one of the reasons he's not here, as many of you may realize, we weekend before last had a major environmental emergency in Minot, and Gene and myself and many other members of our staff have been involved in that, and everybody's pretty tired at this point, and I had asked Gene to continue to work with that problem and informed him that I would come up and handle this issue. The final, you'll notice that the final signature on this document is my own, and I do take responsibility for this decision. Certainly it was made with the input and assistance of Mr. Delmore, who so ably served as the hearing officer, and Mr. Christensen and other members of our environmental health staff. Basically, I just wanted to touch on a few of the significant portions of the findings of fact. By the way, in terms of reviewing the information from the hearings, I did listen to all the tapes, which amounted to about 24 hours total of taped testimony, reviewed most of the other documents, and it was a sizable amount. So I did get involved definitely in reviewing the information. That was one of the reasons why we had a little bit more of a delay in releasing this document than what we had hoped, because we got interrupted by the situation in Minot. So I apologize for that. I'd just like to begin on by pointing out on one of the findings, finding number 3 on page 5 of the document. We put a heavy emphasis on the preamble, basically, to the portion of the North Dakota Century Code that describes the breadth of our air pollution control program. And this was referenced in the hearing and certainly is an important factor that we consider in these types of decisions. It's clear to me that our legislature is very interested in protecting the health of our citizens and our environment in terms of potential air contaminants. And as is indicated in that portion of the Century Code, we have to be responsible for protecting human health, welfare, and property, to prevent injury to plant and animal life, to promote the economic and social development of this state, and to foster the comfort and convenience of the people, and to facilitate the enjoyment of the natural attractions of the state. So that is a pretty broad mandate that the department has, and we have to consider that legislative mandate carefully in the decisions that we make. It was our feeling, on page 6, item 6, we definitely feel that in this instance the responsible party with regard to the necessary permits for the proposed project is UNDERC, that ultimately they are the ones who hold the responsibility for obtaining the necessary permits for the proposed project. It was also our finding that North Dakota does not currently have direct emission limitations applying to the proposed test project, and in particular the issue of possible emissions of polychlorinated biphenyls or PCBs. That simply is not currently identified in statute or in rule. With regard to the issue of public participation, again on page 6 there's reference to basically 3 alternatives that were presumably open to the department in this situation. The first is that the argument that a new permit to construct was required in regard to the proposed project, and thus elements of public participation must be addressed prior to permit issuance. The second option was that the project may have constituted a major modification to the existing permit, thereby requiring the aforementioned public participation elements. Third, that the procedure utilized by the department in amending the current permit to operate without public participation was appropriate in view of reduced overall emissions from the project. And as you'll note, it's our feeling that of those alternatives, the department should have classified this situation as representing a request for a major modification of the existing permit, and as such the department should have utilized public participation. I would just add an additional comment that it's our belief and my belief in conversations with our staff that even had we not moved ahead with the public hearing, that given some of the information that was received by our department, it's unlikely that we would have allowed the proposed incineration of the PCBs. There were several items that we became aware of even prior to the public hearing that raised some significant questions in our mind, and also with regard to EPA. We also have found that the handling, thermal destruction, or disposal of polychlorinated biphenyls within the state of North Dakota must be conducted with special attention to environmental safeguards and clearly defined permit authority and procedures. We feel that given the uncertainties and I guess what is known about PCBs, we really feel that we're going to have very tight, clearly defined permit authority in the handling of this type of material. In addition, on page 7 at the bottom, item 11, based on information as received at the hearing, the department finds that given the proper equipment, experienced personnel, environmental safeguards, clearly established procedures, and proper location, the proposed testing of thermal destruction of chlorinated hydrocarbons, including trichlorobenzene and polychlorinated biphenyls, could be conducted safely and with minimal risk. So we're placing emphasis on our concern with the location of the proposed project. Item 12 is based on information as received at the hearing, UNDERC has not established a clear and well-defined program for ensuring environmental safeguards and tracking its environmentally associated permits. In addition, item 14, based on information as received at the hearing, the proposed test has the potential of emitting pollutants which have been the subject of much environmental concern regarding potential health effects. These potential pollutants include PCBs, dioxins, and dibenzofurans. Item 15, many individuals, I guess, were hoping that we would be able to make a definitive decision with regard to some of the issues of destruction efficiency and some of the other items that were raised. At this time, there is no clear data regarding the actual destruction efficiency of a gasification process on polychlorinated biphenyls themselves. We had some additional concerns that are referenced in the document. During the hearing, the information regarding the spillover of petroleum coke into the scrubber system during the December test was of great concern to us. In addition, we had concerns on page 10, item 22. Based on information as received at the hearing, UNDERC has amended its proposed project from that referenced in its original application and in approvals as granted by the Environmental Protection Agency and the State Department of Health. So item 23 on page 11, based on information as received at the hearing, the location of the UNDERC facility in a residential and university populated area taken in context with section 23-25-01.1 of the North Dakota Century Code makes it imperative that the State Department of Health carefully and strictly review environmental safeguards and permit procedures prior to granting approval of a thermal destruction project which has the potential of emitting pollutants which are and have been the subject of serious environmental concern in the United States. Item 25, information as received at the hearing regarding the potential risk of the proposed test, including its emissions, indicated such risk was low. However, the state-of-the-art of this specific risk assessment and the insufficiency of current data regarding polychlorinated biphenyl and chlorinated hydrocarbon emissions make a decision regarding insignificant or unacceptable levels of risk impossible at this time. We simply do not believe that there is adequate information to make that type of a decision. The order, which is included on pages 12 and 13, basically is, first, that permit condition 7A of air pollution control permit to operate number 078004 be revoked. Item 2, that at the time UNDERC can clearly indicate to the department through application that it has the proper equipment, experienced personnel, environmental safeguards, clearly established procedures, and proper location, it may reapply for a permit to conduct thermal destruction tests like those referenced in the current project. And finally, item 3 of the order, the department recommends that the current location in a residential area not be utilized in future applications involving hazardous materials. If such a location is utilized, the department must review that application with extreme scrutiny. I'd be happy to address questions that you may have.
The project was in a residential area. Would it have changed your thinking a little bit at all? Would you have swayed a little bit in the other direction and perhaps approved it?
Well, I think certainly if there had been, I guess, less risk to individuals, to humans, and to property, certainly that would have been a consideration. And that was an issue, as I've indicated, that was the most concern to us was the location.
What is your opinion at this time of the possibility of some kind of permit being granted to carry out the experiment?
Well, as I've indicated, if we could address the issues that we identified there, not just the location, but the other items too, to where we felt that there was the necessary equipment, which in my mind would include the concerns about the testing of the final emissions after the flare for possible toxic or hazardous materials. That I think those are the kinds of issues we'd be concerned about. But again, the main issue is if we are to give approval for this type of test, we're really going to be urging that it not be in a residential area because of the level of uncertainty that still exists.
Your last order mentions further applications for hazardous materials. Are you talking about thermal destruction of hazardous materials or any other type of projects? What kind of projects would be covered in that?
Well, primarily we're still addressing the same type of project, which would be a proposed thermal destruction of hazardous materials.
Did the Minot fire recently play any part in your decision-making process?
No, the Minot fire, other than delaying finalizing this issue, did not play a role in my mind. Certainly that is a major environmental disaster, but was not in any way the basis for this decision.
Were there any chemicals burned in that fire that might have released the same kinds of contaminants that are in question in this case?
Well, certainly from what we know about the materials that were included in that warehouse, there were more than 54 chemicals, most of them pesticides. We frankly don't know exactly what types of combinations of chemicals might have been created either from the fire itself or from the mixing of the products or from the application of water on that fire. We have, because of the possibility of dioxin formation in that situation, have submitted samples to an EPA laboratory for testing for dioxins. So yes, it was our feeling that from the standpoint of potential production of dioxins from that accident that was a possibility. The lab tests we've received back so far did not show at least any evidence in 3 specimens of the 2378 TCDD, which would have been the most significant dioxin. But other than that incident taking a significant part of staff time. I see these as two separate issues.
I see.
Didn't hear you say that you don't really know if you have the ability to make a risk assessment on this project. If that's so, and even if they got the correct machinery and personnel and all of that, could you grant it anyway if you can't do a proper risk assessment on the project?
Well, again, the difficulty was trying to make a risk assessment on this specific project, and I guess if we ended up in a situation where the feeling was that the risks of discharge of potentially toxic materials was extremely low, but that no one could guarantee that, if that experiment were to occur, it certainly should not be done in a populated area. But I guess what we're finding is when you get down to risk assessments in these types of situations, it's our feeling that science, while perhaps it's much more thorough than in past years, is not particularly exact.
There was a risk assessment presented by Michael Goff at the hearing. How did you scrutinize his testimony?
Well, basically, we looked at the approach that he took, and certainly he was utilizing some of the approaches that have been recommended by EPA. But I guess the difficulty is that some of the issues that were raised in the hearing itself, when you look at the potential error of the final determination perhaps being as large as the determination itself, that's a pretty sizable error in terms of making a decision that it could affect human health.
Is this project being terminated based on a scientific, and the emotion that it raised in the community has no basis in your decision?
Well, I think, as I indicated from the preamble in to the air pollution law, certainly there are a lot of factors that we have to take into consideration. I guess basically what we're saying is that the science is not developed far enough yet to make the kinds of decisions that were expected in this type of situation. In other words, we did not feel that we were in a situation where we could give any resident of this community a 100% guarantee that there could not be any adverse health effects of this project.
Would you need a 100% guarantee?
Well, I don't know that we have to have a 100% guarantee, but I guess where the emotion problem comes in is with regard to the degree of uncertainty that existed, and certainly with the kinds of fears and distrust that existed in the community, that certainly was not contributing to the health and welfare of the community. From that standpoint, certainly that's a factor we have to consider.
Haven't you given the project, though, an impossible burden to try to sway it that it would ever be 100% guarantee? Isn't it impossible for anything scientific to be 100% guaranteed?
I don't believe we were really saying that. I guess what we were saying is that to have the project located in a residential area, the level of uncertainty in our mind is too high to have it located in a residential area. Beyond that, I'm not prepared to say what might be developed in the future with regard to assuring further safeguards for this type of project.
You mentioned that location was one of the primary points in the decision-making process. I was wondering, during the hearing, there are also alleged safety violations that came up at the ERC. I was wondering what weight, if any, did that carry in your decision?
Perhaps Mr. Delmore could address that.
Now, these are the recommendations as I worked with Dr. Wentz and Gina. It had some bearing. We did a hazardous waste inspection of the site after the hearing and found very few violations. So those particular issues weren't raised as highly. The bigger concern was information received the first day and a half of the hearing regarding environmental tracking, permit tracking, those type things, and how those safety concerns bore on that did weigh in what's here in these particular findings.
Dr. Wentz, did the apparent lack of insurance for this project bear any weight in the decision?
Not in my mind. I did not really see that as an issue for us to become involved in.
Does your department have some kind of recommendation of where such a project could be located? You're saying not a populated area, but where then would be more appropriate?
No, I guess we're not in a position to make any specific recommendation for where it might occur.
you're the final authority on this? There's no way that this could be appealed by UND, or is this dead?
No,
or can they reapply?
That's it is appealable to district court. Are there other questions?
Thank you.
Thank you.
And that concludes a round of applause breaking out here from some of the members of the Concerned Citizens group. That appears to have drawn an end to this long, lengthy debate. And we're not going to go to Tammy Nelson, who is going to talk to David Thompson, the attorney for the Concerned Citizens Group, who's opposed this project. Tammy?
Yeah, just...
Thank you for your help.
Dave, Tom, shaking a few hands here. Your react, were you surprised at the decision that they would revoke the permit, or had you expected an opposite decision?
To be very honest with you, we felt that we'd made a very solid record administratively at the hearing, and we felt that we had made the necessary factual demonstration, and we believe that we had made the necessary legal arguments to win. In that respect, I was optimistic. I'm not going to say that I had no doubts whatsoever. Union Carbide's a big corporation. There's been a lot of money spent on this project, and there was a lot of arm twisting done in this community with regard to an attempted at promotion of it. And so I had faith and I had confidence in the Department of Health and the state of North Dakota. I think I'd like to put a plug in for our state government. I think it's very clean state government. I think it has a lot of integrity, and I think that integrity in state government was manifested today. A big company like Union Carbide can't come in here with a lot of money and buy a permit. And we feel that, and Dr. Frank and others in the community who gave their expertise and assistance put in on the record the factual material that we had to put in there to demonstrate the essence of the position of the department today, which was there are too many uncertainties, and Dr. Goff's risk assessment was just as we characterized it. It was pie in the sky, and his margin of error was many times greater than the projected level or degree of accuracy of his prediction. So essentially, what Dr. Goff had to say meant nothing, and I think we demonstrated that clearly.
Are you expecting an appeal to the courts?
I have no idea. I think that we felt that we had to win this matter administratively. The standard of review which is applied on appeal from an administrative agency decision pursuant to the North Dakota Administrative Agencies Practices Act is one of great deference shown by the courts to the administrative agency involved. In other words, a judge is not going to say in the state district court, which is the appeal of first instance, that the judge is going to say, look, I'm not an expert in environmental matters and air ambient quality standards. That's the Department of Health's responsibility. They have expertise in that area, and they heard the evidence, and they examined the exhibits and so forth. The court is simply going to look at the record, if there is an appeal, and determine whether the decision of the agency, in this instance the Department of Health, is supported by substantial evidence on the record. Pretty tough standard for them to surmount on appeal.
I guess what I wanted to ask you about was that they made clear that the public hearings didn't really have that much influence on their decision. What's your feelings about that?
Okay, we're going to, Tammy's now has Al Wentz, the man who is the leader of this project from the Energy Research Center. Tammy?
Were you, do you think the Energy Research Center will appeal the process to the court, or what's your gut feeling right now, go back and regroup and maybe apply again?
We'll need to look at the written decision a little bit closer, and then I think decide what we plan to do. We're very disappointed in this decision, obviously, and I think we need to do some thinking before we decide where we're going next on this.
Prior to this, had you felt pretty confident going into this news conference that the decision would go your way?
Well, you never know how these things are going to turn out, and so I guess I'm disappointed, and it's the best way I can describe it.
Okay. So do you think there'll be meetings like today at this point to discuss what's your next step, or at what point do you start that process?
Meetings and discussions certainly in the near future to talk about where we go from here.
Okay, thank you. We're talking with Al Wentz, director of the PCB project. Dale?
Thank you, Tammy. There are people, reporters crawling all over the place here trying to get reactions from people. Everyone was here, all the main constituents in this proceeding were here except President Tom Clifford, who does have a press conference scheduled for 4 o'clock this afternoon. And I would imagine that would still be on, even though this project has been effectively killed here today. This has been a much debated topic. It's been a controversial topic. All along, the Concerned Citizens Group has said, don't do it in a residential area. There's no guarantees. It's very risky, and that's basically what the health department has agreed to and has said itself. Tammy Nelson now is trying to see who she's talking to.
But what it's costing
Kathy Williams.
Okay, Kathy
one of the
Williams.
movers in the Citizens Group.
the amount of time that he put into this without being paid. I mean, he did this as a pro bono case, which I think is just amazing. He put a lot of work into this, and but the cost to the community, the cost can't even be translated in dollar and cents at this point. There's been a lot of volunteer time, a lot of effort into this.
Kathy, talking with other reporters, and I was coming in late. I saw the smiles coming on your face as I read through that decision. Were you expecting a much longer fight?
Yes, I was. Personally, I really was. I thought that it might go a little further. I thought that there would maybe be more of a conditional thing. I'm really pleased, really surprised. I'm really pleased.
If there is an appeal to the district courts, will your attorney, Dave Thompson, continue on for nothing? He hasn't charged you anything?
To my knowledge, To my knowledge, you'd have to,
How about that there was talk that they could regroup and apply again? Now, will your group disband at this point, or will it keep on as a watchdog?
We're meeting today. In fact, as soon as I get done with this, we're going to be meeting over at Mr. DeFlyer's house, and we'll be talking about those very issues. What will we do in case of an appeal? Shall we continue on as an environmental group? Should we formalize a little bit more? And those are things we have to talk about.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah,
Kathy
thank
Williams with Citizens Group opposed to the project.
And thank you, Tammy. And we're just getting some of the reactions from the people here. The Health Department has issued it's 13-page opinion here of the findings of fact, as they call it. It's basically the facts as they've summarized them. And it's a brief document, but it does get to the core of the matter of what the future of this project will be. As you heard, the project will have to be appealed to district court if the ERC wants to continue with this sort of a project. Also, if they want to do other types of projects, burning hazardous chemicals, they will have to apply for those types of permits, and the health department has forewarned them that they will be scrutinizing those permits very, very carefully. So there still is this press conference, as I mentioned before, a press conference with Tom Clifford scheduled at 4 o'clock this afternoon, and we will be continuing our live coverage with that from the University of North Dakota. I'm not quite sure what President Clifford will have to say, since the project is dead and gone, as they say, unless there is an appeal. So from the Civic Auditorium in downtown Grand Forks, for Tammy Nelson and Roger Moore, our technician, I'm Dale Zucker, KFJM News.